Hello there, and welcome. Well, today I'm going to do a presentation for you, or a facsimile of a presentation for you, that I worked out while I was first teaching poetry. When I started teaching poetry, I didn't have nearly enough experience with poetry to teach it well. And so each night I was studying just to try to stay ahead of the students. And one of my real blind spots where poetry was concerned had to do with poetic meter. I had never been taught meter or the term scansion in all my time in school. So I didn't know any of them. And luckily, I had had training in music. So I had an ear for linguistic rhythm. I could hear it. For some students, this is the hardest part, is they can't necessarily hear it. So it's difficult for them to pick up this skill. Scansion is where you try to figure out where the stresses in a line of poetry go. And so this lesson is basically a sort of primer course in the standard meters in English and how to identify them. So I would usually begin by talking about stressed and non-stressed syllables in the English language. But I'm not going to start there. I'm going to start sort of in the midst of the presentation because I just want to go through basically some of the elements that I did. And I did not use slides typically for this presentation. I wrote on the board. So I'm going to try to work out some images of that so that you can kind of see what it looks like. So I would begin by talking about the mother of all meters and our favorite uncle, Uncle Bill, William Shakespeare, and the iambic meter. Iambic meter is something that students have heard, and lots of people have heard, even if they don't know what it is. And famously, Shakespeare liked to write an iambic pentameter. Now, this is really important because it turns out that when you're projecting on stage, that length of line fits nicely into the body. It can be projected well, and it's comfortable. It's made for the body. And so the reason why Shakespeare used it so much was it was perfectly fitted to stage work. So we're going to start with the first line of one of his very famous poems, Sonnet 18. The poem begins, "Shall I compare thee to a summer's day?" Now, I would write that up on the board, and then I would, of course, recite it. "Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May, and summer's lease hath all too short a date. Sometime too hot the eye of heaven shines, and often is his gold complexion dim, and every fair from fair sometime declines by chance, or nature's changing course untrimmed. But thy eternal summer shall not fade, nor lose possession of that fair thou owest, nor shall death brag thou wanderest in his shade, when in eternal line to time thou growest. So long as men can breathe, or eyes can see, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee." Now, I loved doing that because, of course, I am made to show off. But one of the things that I first emphasized was, what do you notice about the poem? Even more than the rhythm, you notice the rhyme. So does emphasis go on the rhyme? You bet you. So we take this line, "Shall I compare thee to a summer's day?" And we know that day rhymes with May later on in the poem. So day, a single syllable word at the end of the line, gets a strong stress. We'll mark that with an S. Now, the way that I taught this meter is a little different than some people have learned it, but I used S's and O's. The reason I used S's and O's, here's the big secret, because that's the way the book I was using did it. That's the way I did it, and it was a very good book. So, there's only one S per word, almost always. Now, there are exceptions. Wigwam has two S's. Igloo has two S's. This may be because many native languages use more primary stresses than secondary stresses. So, if we look at that line, "Shall I compare thee to a summer's day?" there are two words that have more than one syllable: compare and summers. And so I would go through and ask the students, is it summers or summers? Of course, it's summers. So that got an SO. And compare, is it comber or compare? Well, it's compare. So the second syllable got the strong stress. And we'd put it on that way. And then we'd figure out the rest of the line. And what would we discover? That 5 times a weak syllable was followed by a strong syllable. So 5 weak strongs is 5 feet or pentameter. Penta being the Greek prefix for 5. Now, isn't that wonderful? Poetry is the only place in the world where a foot equals a meter. And that's why men love poetry. If you didn't get it, it's okay. Some of these jokes are just for me. So, anyway, that's iambic pentameter. Of course, what's the obvious variation? Can you see it? Can you guess it? And I write up on the board, willows whiten, aspens quiver, little breezes dusk and shiver. And so we go to the end of the first line. That's how we figure it out, because rhyming really helps us figure out stress. So, willows whiten, aspens quiver. Is it quiver or quiver? Oh, it's quiver. So the S is on the qui, right? Aspens. Is it aspens or aspens? Well, the S is on the ass. You get it. I really enjoyed this lesson. Anyway, you go through it and you discover that in the 2 lines, you have 4 feet of trochaic meter. Trochaic is the first variation on anapestic. And of course, if it's 4 feet, it's tetrameter. Tetrameter. Very nice. Pentameter, tetrameter. Now those are the 2 main, the big body of rhythm that naturally happens in English. It is naturally an iambic language, possibly because of its Latinate components, because Latin loves to do that too. Now, what about different meters? Well, there's a group of meters called pyrrhic meters, where there's weaker stresses more often. And the first of this is called anapestic meter. So I found this great line. It's super long. It never fits on anything, but it's a super long, wonderful line from Shapiro. As a sloop with a sweep of immaculate wings on her delicate spine. Wow, what a line! As a sloop with a sweep of immaculate wings on her delicate spine. So we go to spine. It's a single syllable word, clearly meaningful. We put an S on it. Then we have delicate and immaculate. So delicate, is it delicate, delicate, or delicate? It's delicate, so it's S on the del. Now the other multisyllable word, immaculate, that's 4. So where does the strong stress go in that word? Oh my goodness, it goes on Mac. That's right, Mac. So we put the S on Mac and O's on the other syllables in the word immaculate. And the rhythm we get is anapestic, O-O-S. And if we count the number of times it's repeated in that remarkably long line of poetry, it's 6. So it's 6 feet or anapestic hexameter. Isn't that wonderful? Now there's another pyrrhic meter in English that's commonly used, although it's rarer, and it's often combined with other meters, and that is the dactyl. So the example I use is a little poem, take her up tenderly, lift her with care, fashioned so slenderly, young and so fair. So of course we're going to look at tenderly and slenderly, right? Tenderly, 3-syllable word, S on the first syllable. Slenderly, same story. Take her up. Which one's the most meaningful? Oh, take. Take's the most meaningful. Then in the second line, lift her with care. You get care. You know that's an S because it's a single syllable word with a rhyme at the end of a line. And lift. So on that line, it's going to be S-O-O-S. So if you look at these lines, there's dactyls, S-O-O-S-O-O-S-O-O-S, So on the second and fourth lines, we have a trochee followed by an iamb, or a dactyl followed by an s. Whichever way you figure it, they're 2 feet long lines, and so they're diameters. Now there's another rhythm that's in English and that appears in English and has the opposite effect of the anapaests and the dactyl, and that's the spondee. The spondee is any line of poetry that has more S's than O's. And what you'll see in all those previous examples is that the line is either half weak stresses and half strong, or over half weak stresses, 2/3 weak stresses, and to a third of strong stresses. The pyrrhic meters run faster out of the mouth, but the spondaic meters, spondee, runs much slower. So here's an example of the spondee, which the students very rarely got. The old dog barks backwards without getting up. Okay. I can remember when he was a pup. The spondee is more S's than O's in the line, and therefore it can't be measured. It's sort of a slow, strong meter. And so if you look at it, the old dog barks backward. Backward is one of those rare English words that has 2 strong stresses on it. The rest of the line, the only other weak stress is the. Old dog and barks are all single syllable words of meaning that get a strong stress. And the line slows down because of that spondaic character. So it doesn't have any particular length measurement, but it's a spondee because it's mostly strong stresses. Now, when I would be teaching this presentation, I would go through it with the students and we would have a lovely time because I wanted them to participate. I wanted them to try to figure it out. So I would stop rather than just going straight through as I have here. But by golly, having that presentation handy in my pocket also allowed me to vary it through time. I used different verses, I used different examples of different meters, just for the fun of having them there and just for the fun of sharing how the rhythm of language affects us in ways that are surprising and satisfying. That's it for today. I hope you have a lovely rest of the day, and I hope you see me again, you gorgeous people.